Okay, great. Thank you, Mitch. Oh, welcome everyone. Can you imagine how exciting that was? So here we are today in 2021. And yes, our focus had to change to a virtual platform for the first time due to COVID. But on the positive side, we are delighted to share our love of Dunbar with people from around the world. We feel it is important to our history and our culture that Dunbar's literary legacy continues to be heard, especially together on this day during Black History Month. In the words of Professor Nikki Giovanni, another fabulous poet, author, and fan of Dunbar, Nikki opened with Dunbar's poetry in her book on the Harlem Renaissance. The book is Shimmy, 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 like my sister Kate. So I quote Nikki G. Dunbar was not only heard by European Americans, but he was also published in the magazines of his time. He was revered, but simple and clear. Paul Laurence Dunbar was directly connected to Langston Hughes, and Dunbar's poems are always being recited in churches, at important meetings and gatherings. Dunbar's work creates a feeling of community. That is what Nikki Giovanni had to say about Paul Laurence Dunbar. So it is on this day, February 28th, 2021, we gather to share with you a feeling of community for our hearts that are overflowing with Dunbar straight to yours. Virtually, you could be any other place today. So once again, thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. To open our program, I am pleased to introduce you to Mrs. Margaret Booz. Mrs. Booz is the president of Paul Laurence Dunbar High School Alumni Association of Dayton, Ohio. She is a retired social service employee, and her parents and her other family members all attended and graduated from Paul Laurence Dunbar High School in Dayton. She grew up listening to Paul Dunbar's writings and poetry, and she continues to enjoy sharing them with all her children in her family. Her desire is to have the Dunbar schools across the nation, and there's several all across America. She would love for them to come together and have an annual celebration of Paul Laurence Dunbar's legacy. Please welcome Mrs. Booz and allow for some technical adjustments, please. All right.
Again, if you just joined us, please turn your video off. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mitch, for the reminders. Okay. Miss Booz, let me make sure you're unmuted. Hold on, sweetheart. I'm going to unmute you.
I can do it.
Can you unmute yourself now? No.
Yes. We're in.
All right, hold on.
Are we ready?
Yes, hold on. Let me just make sure you're spotlighted.
Okay.
There you are. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow Dunbarians. It is my pleasure to celebrate Dayton's very own Poet Laureate, Paul Laurence Dunbar. My connection to each of my Dunbarians today is none other than Mrs. Laverne Ski. Mrs. Ski is Dayton's own jewel, the vanguard of Mr. Dunbar's historical contributions to the world, and we thank her. We thank her immensely. As I make the introduction of Mr. Dunbar, I think it's important to be introduced to the parents that created him. Our esteemed native son was born to African descended parents Matilda Burton Dunbar, and Sergeant Joshua Dunbar. June 27, 1872, here in Dayton, Ohio. Paul's parents were married December 24th of 1871. Mr. Dunbar was 29 years Mrs. Dunbar's senior. They were divorced in 1876. However, to their union, 2 children were born, Paul and his little sister, Elizabeth, that not too many people remember anything about. Elizabeth also passed away as a child, a small child. Mrs. Dunbar also had 2 older sons, Robert and William, with her first husband. Joshua Dunbar escaped from slavery in Kentucky before the Civil War ended, traveling to Canada, later traveling to Boston to join the 55th Massachusetts Colored Infantry. Although he was given a disability discharge, Joshua enlisted a second time in 1864 in the 5th Regiment of Massachusetts Cavalry Volunteers. In 1865, near the conclusion of the Civil War, Joshua moved to Dayton, where he met Matilda, a widow, along with her 2 sons. Although married only a few years, Joshua was an alcoholic and engaged in domestic violence, what we deem domestic violence now, but not then. He was a plasterer by trade, but did not support his wife and children. Sergeant Joshua Dunbar passed away in 1885 at the Ohio Veterans Home and is buried at the Dayton VA Cemetery as well. I just always wanted to elaborate on the fact that our DNA is so important, and we know that we are all very aware of the multitude of ways that Paul's literary works were affected by his father's life as a slave in Kentucky and as a colored soldier for the Union in the Civil War, as a freed man with no freedoms, as a colored man unable to support his family, and a Black man who wore the mask to hide his pain with alcoholism. So we know for certain that Paul did get some of this DNA because he turned to alcohol and he became an alcoholic. We know that he was depressed lots of times and in a dark place. However, we also know that it's probably, the DNA of his dad as well as his mother, that he was who he was, meaning that he was a genius, a literary genius. Matilda Murphy Dunbar was a freed slave from Kentucky who traveled to Dayton, Ohio with her 2 sons and her mother and other family members. After the death of her young daughter and divorce to Paul's father, Mother Dunbar concentrated on the raising of her 3 sons. Although life was terribly difficult, Mother Dunbar was determined Paul would not drop out of school as his brothers had to help support their family. Mother Dunbar, with a Black mother's dedication and determination, and we know what that means, personally helped to educate Paul. As a little boy, Paul was known to be talkative and a quick learner and great with words. Mother Dunbar taught Paul to read the Bible as she had learned herself. Mother Dunbar was dedicated to Paul from the beginning of his life to the day he passed away while reading the 23rd Psalms from that same Bible. Her love stood the test of time for her son. Mrs. Matilda Dunbar remained in the house purchased by Paul at 219 Paul Laurence Dunbar Street, which is now a registered historical site, until she passed away in 1936. Mother Dunbar's viewing was held at Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, the first Black high school in Dayton, Ohio. And we're still standing. Thank you. Receiving his introductory preschool education from Mother Dunbar, Paul attended 10th Street Elementary School in Dayton, later attending Central High School, attending Howard University in late years college in Washington, D.C. At Central High School, Paul was the only Black student in his class, which also included fellow classmate Orville Wright. Paul was president of the Literary Society Club at Central and on the debate team and editor of his school newspaper. Paul was editor of his own newspaper, The Tatler, at the young age of 18. He was the first Black student to graduate with honors from a Dayton high school. Paul was valedictorian of his graduating class. After graduating with so many honors and being a respected editor and writer, Paul was turned down by all the journalism employers in the Dayton area. Discouraged but never defeated, he continued to write and self-publish his first book, Oak and Ivy, in 1893, and selling his work by any means necessary, sometimes even to people riding the elevator while working as an elevator operator. We should certainly add entrepreneur, because he sold his books by any means necessary. Undeterred as the literary genius of yesterday and tomorrow for the world to honor, share, and celebrate, Mr. Dunbar remained enthralled with his birthplace, writing a toast to Dayton. He wrote over 400 poems along with lyrics, novels, and short stories. Mr. Dunbar died February 9th, 1906 in Dayton, Ohio. I'm sorry, my eyes are watering. I'm sorry, my eyes are burning. Mr. Dunbar died February 9th, 1906 in Dayton, Ohio. He is buried at Woodland Cemetery, Dayton, Ohio. And near him is buried Mother Dunbar and baby sister Elizabeth as well. Each year on February 9th, we meet at Woodlands, and when I say we, I mean the Alumni Association and everyone who comes to honor his memory. And that is a variety of people that come from everywhere, not just from our city. Each year on February 9th, as I said, we meet at Woodlands Mausoleum to be enlightened by Mr. Dunbar's works in Negro spirituals, continuing to his gravesite to place wreaths for he, his sister, and his mother. Obviously, this year, because of COVID, we were unable to do that, but we will certainly make up for it next year. I thank you.
Thank you, Miss Margaret Booth. We so appreciate hearing from you and getting we so appreciate hearing from you. And thank you so much for that history of Paul Laurence Dunbar's parents. And thank you so much for keeping his vision and his work alive for everyone. Thank you again, Miss Margaret Booth. Okay, well, we're going to move forward. We are dealing with this, the view, we're dealing with the technical issues here, but as everyone knows, we're all in this together when we're doing these technical issues here on Zoom. So what I'm going to do is I have to unpin. Hello, 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 hello. And next up, I'm going to introduce you to two very talented brothers who are going to present for you. I want to spotlight myself, but hold on, let me unpin. We have a lot of people coming in, that's for sure.
And again, those who are coming in, please turn your video off. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right. So I am going to, yes, thank you. When you do that, then I can speak and present the next artist here. All righty. Thank you everyone for being so cooperative. You know, it's very challenging to deal with this. Mitch, something's on with you. I'm not seeing myself. I'm not able to see myself spotlighted. So let me go back to the gallery. There I am. Okay, Mitch, can you, right. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for your patience. Mitch, I'm still seeing you on the screen. I'm still seeing you.
I've got the video off and I've got the mute button off.
Okay. Well, I just see you here. And I guess I have to, I don't want to spotlight everyone.
Just go with it.
pin. There we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us. You know, this Zoom is very challenging. So we're going to welcome next Mitch Capel and Reginald Harmon as they collaborate on two presentations of Dunbar's poems. One is Prayers, and the next one you'll hear is To a Dead Friend. But before we proceed, I'd like to tell you a bit about Mitch and Reginald. Mitch, Granddaddy Junebug, is a storyteller, author, playwright, comedian, poet, and as the National Association of Black Storytellers' favorite MC, Mitch will be hosting the remainder of this program for us today. Mitch began his journey of storytelling in 1985, and he has memorized over 70% of Paul Laurence Dunbar's works. Mitch Capel is hailed as the national interpreter of the Poet Laureate. He has used his talent for voiceovers as Dunbar in films, and it is Mitch's voice that you hear when you visit the kiosks at the Wright Dunbar Interpretive Center and in the Dunbar House in Dayton, Ohio. You can visit with Mitch at his website, www.gjbug.com. And along with Mitch, who will be performing on his saxophone, is Reginald Harmon. Reginald Harmon was raised in Dayton, Ohio, and he is a distinguished first-class saxophonist. He has appeared in many venues around the world, and his smooth jazz and spoken word blend leaves no doubt that Reginald Harmon is a 21st century Renaissance man. Brother Harmon also composed jazz arrangements for such groups as Pieces of a Dream, and he's toured extensively, sharing the stage with many jazz greats. Reginald Harmon is a painter, he's a sculptor, and he's a music producer. His various creative business collaborations speak to the range of gifts God has given him. You can visit with Reginald Harmon at his website is infiniteconceptsllc.com. infiniteconceptsllc.com. And he has CDs available at his website. I'll put some information in the chat as well. So please welcome Dunbarian extraordinaire, Mitch Capel, and jazz saxophonist, Reginald Harmon. All right. Oh, righty. Let me pin them up for you.
We good?
Where are you, Mitch? I'm looking for you. We have so many people have joined us today. I have Reginald up. Hold on. All right. Okay. Mitch, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so I need to find you. Sorry about this, but I'm looking for you. Well, speak and then I'll find you and you should come up. We have about 68 people I have to go through to find
That's
you.
all right. Go ahead, Reggie. Don't worry about seeing me. We just want to hear Reggie. See Reggie.
Well,
You have to see me.
Hold on. Hold on. Well, you are a host, so you should be able to show yourself.
All right.
You should be able to pin yourself up. Reggie, you will have to do the same.
Oh, Lord, you're talking way out of my league.
Hold on, let me just see if I can find you. There you are, you're there. All right, here.
All right.
Pin, there you are. And then Reginald, I'm getting this.
Good.
I'm doing good. Reginald, are you there? Hold on. All right. Reginald, will you unmute yourself? Brother Reginald? There he is. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
There we go. I'm unmuted now.
Okay, we're ready for you. We're listening.
O Lord, the hard-worn miles have worn my stumbling feet. O soothe me with thy smiles and make my life complete. The thorns were thick and keen wherever I trembling trod. The way was long between my wounded where healing waters flow, do thou my footsteps lead. My heart is aching, so thy gracious balm I need. Beyond the years, the answer lies, beyond where brood the grieving skies and night drops tears. Where faith rod chastens smiles to rise and doff its fears, and carping sorrow pines and dies beyond the years. Beyond the years, the prayer for rest shall beat no more within the breast. The darkness clears. And morn, perched on the mountain's crest, her form uprears. The day that is to come is best beyond the years. Beyond the years, the soul shall find that endless peace for which it pined, for light appears. To the eyes that still were blind with blood and tears, their sight shall come all unconfined beyond the years. It is as if a silver chord were suddenly grown mute and life songs with its rhythms warred against a silver lute. It is as if a silence fell where bides the garnered sheaf, and voices murmuring, "It is well," are stifled by our grief. It is as if the gloom of night had hid a summer's day, and willows sighing at their plight bent low beside the way. For he was part of all the best that nature loves and gives, and evermore on memory's breast he lies and laughs and lives. Yes. Reginald Harmon, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Reginald Harmon. Thank you, Reginald.
My pleasure.
Now, that was actually 3 poems. The middle one there was Beyond the Years. Now, at this time, I'm going to bring a brother from up there in the Ohio area who I've had the pleasure of performing with on several occasions during the Dunbar celebrations over the years. Brother Ralph Boone, he's a native of Cincinnati, Ohio, who is a retired math teacher. Mr. Moon discovered Paul Dunbar's collections, editions of the complete poems on his grandparents' upright piano when he was 35 years young. The book was open to the poem, A Place Where the Rainbow Ends, and he immediately committed the poem to memory in 2 days. He went on to study Dunbar's works, putting over 14 of Dunbar's poems to memory. Ralph Moon has presented at the Dunbar House for over 30 years and is the principal speaker for the annual fundraiser. Mr. Dunbar treats Paul Dunbar as a class act, which he well should, who is etched in his memory, and Dunbar's works will be part of him for the rest of his life. Family, please welcome Mr. Ralph Moon as he shares with us Dunbar's A Poet and His Song.
Good afternoon to everyone. The poem goes like this. A song but is a little thing, and yet what joy it is to sing. And hours of toil that gives me zest. And when at eve I long for rest, when cows come home along the bars, and in the fold I hear the bell, as night the shepherd herds his stars, I sing my song and all is well. My days are never days of ease. I till the ground and prune my trees. When ripened gold is all the plain, I have to put my sickle to the grain. I labor hard and I toil and I sweat, while others dream within the dell. But even while my brow is wet, I sing my song and all is well. Sometimes the sun unkindly hot, my garden makes for a desert spot. And sometimes the blight upon the tree takes all my fruit away from me. Then with throes of bitter pain, rebellious passions may rise and swell. But life is more than fruit or grain, and so I sing, and all is well.
Thank you, Brother Moon, for that wonderful rendition. It's one of my favorite poems as well, not one that I have set to memory though, but thank you so much for that. This program is called, we don't have flyers made up, but it's actually called Majors and Minors. That was the second book Dunbar published, the first being Oak and Ivy. He called it Majors and Minors because the standard English poems were considered the majors and the minors were those in the dialect or the vernacular of our people. One of the most prolific standard poems or majors that he wrote was a poem called An Ode to Ethiopia. And I'm going to set it up for you because in the spring of 1893, when Dunbar was only 21 years young, a lawyer from Toledo, Ohio, named Charles Thatcher had read a copy of Oak and Ivy and asked Dunbar to come to Toledo to speak to the West End Club, which was an exclusive literary society. And Dunbar described the place as a very wealthy and aristocratic private club. Well, Dunbar was not the only man on the schedule that evening. There was a Dr. W.C. Chapman who came on before Dunbar, and he had recently returned from a trip to the South, and he declared, and I quote, that the old time feeling of white against black in the South is just as important as it ever was. He said, the blacks are lazy and unambitious in spite of the many educational advantages offered them. Well, of course, Dunbar wasn't playing with that, so he got up and he smashed Chapman's narrow-mindedness with his dignified bearing and overflowing talent. He stood up when introduced and said, I shall give you one poem that I had not intended on doing. And then he recited an ode to Ethiopia. And that's when I really became a big fan of Dunbar's when I read this story because of his courage to do that at 21 years young, the only African-American in that room in Toledo, Ohio. This is what he said. O mother race, to thee I bring this pledge of faith, unwavering, this tribute to thy glory. I know the pangs which thou didst feel when slavery crushed thee with its heel with thy dear blood all gory. Sad days were those, sad indeed. But through the land, the fruitful seed of better times was growing. The plant of freedom upward sprung and spread its leaves so fresh and young, its blossoms now are blowing. On every hand in this fair land, proud Ethiopia's swarthy children stand beside their fairer neighbor. The forests flee before their stroke. Their hammers ring, their forges smoke, they stir in honest labor. They tread the fields where honor calls. Their voices sound through Senate halls in majesty and power. To right they cling. The hymns they sing up to the skies in beauty ring and bolder grow each hour. Be proud, my race, in mind and soul. Thy name is writ on glory scroll in characters of fire. High mid the clouds of fame's bright sky, thy banners blazon, foes now fly, and truth shall lift them higher. Thou hast the right to noble pride, whose spotless robes were purified by blood severe baptism. Upon thy brow the cross was laid, and labor's painful sweat beads made a consecrating chrism. No other race, or white or black, when bound as thou were to the rack, so seldom stooped to grieving. No other race, when free again, forgot the past and proved them men so noble in forgiving. Go on and up. Our souls and our eyes shall follow thy continuous rise. Thy ears shall list thy story from bards who from thy root shall spring and proudly tune their lyres to sing of Ethiopia's glory. What courage did that take to stand up and do that? Took a lot of courage. And speaking of courage, I'm going to bring to another brave young man who I met years ago. He's like a brother to me. He's a good, strong brother. His name is Dylan Pritchett. Now, Dylan is out of Williamsburg, Virginia. And since 1990, Dylan Pritchett has been a full-time storyteller, taking his African and African-American folktales throughout the country. He's been honored to serve as the president of the National Association of Black Storytellers Incorporated, served 10 years on its board of directors, and served as the festival director for many years. He is equally proud of authoring his children's picture books, The First Music and The Yellow Speckled Blackbird. Dylan Pritchett is a favorite storyteller of mine, and I heard him tell this story, and I had to have him on this program today. Ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna love my good friend Dylan Pritchett as he tells Dunbar's short story, Viney's Papers.
Unmute yourself, Dylan.
I am unmuted.
Okay, well, we're listening.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
I see me now. There was joy in the bosom of Ben Raymond, where there had been joy for about 2 months now, because it was 2 months ago that Verne gave Ben a coquettish yes, and they was married. It was long and trying courtship. Well, it was a long and trying courtship for Ben, because you see, Verne, couldn't nobody dress up their darker charms better than Verne. And all of the men folks knew Verne too. When Verne walked by in the morning and said, "Good morning, boys," that was a hello and an invitation at the same time. So Verne had many suitors, but for some reason, she got married with Ben. Well, the quitting bell blew, and Ben, he threw his hoe up on his shoulder and went on home. And as soon as he got to his quarter, there she was. There stood Verne with that little green pink dress with them with the little pink flowers on it. Well, he walked by and gave her a kiss and went on in and sat down to eat dinner. And but Ben, he said, "Well, I had a mighty good talk with Master Raymond today, Verne." She said, "Oh, that's real good, Ben." And he said, "Yeah, I said, got some exciting stuff to tell you." She said, "Ain't no such a thing. You ain't got nothing to tell me." He said, "Oh, I ain't, is her?" Well, I guess I don't. She said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "No, you say ain't got nothing." He said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "No, Well, after they had finished eating, Ben, he went there and started reading his book, trying not to pick her no mind. Then all of a sudden, she said, "Well, what is it, Ben?" He said, "Well, Vine," he said, "I had a talk with Master Raymond today. And I asked Master Raymond if he would let me do a little bit of overwork and put some money on the books to save some money." Vine said, "That's real nice, Ben. It'd be nice if we could get a little bit of money, get a few extra things around here." Ben said, No, Vine, no. I asked Master Raymond if we could put money on the books so that I can save money and buy your freedom, my little girl." Vine said, Ben, you gonna buy my freedom? It's for my freedom." He said, "Now, Vine," he said, "it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take right much time." He said, but I believe that's what I wants to do. You think we can do it, Ben? You think we can do it?" Ben held his arm up and showed him them knots like oak. And he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "like I said, it's gonna take some time, but that's what I wants to do for you." Oh, they hugged and kissed all night that night. Then Ben, he started doing what it took in order to buy Vine's free papers. Well, he'd work a little overtime and help mend some fences as soon as the quitting bell had blew, and work, did a little bit of extra on Saturdays and Sundays, and not just that, but some of the folks around had heard that that's what Ben was doing. They was doing little extra things. They would sell some eggs and tell Master Raymond to put it on the books for Vine's free papers. Everybody started pitching in to do this thing. And Ben, he worked so hard. I mean, one of the things that Ben liked to do was play his banjo, but when Ben came home, he was so broke down and tired that his fingers couldn't even pluck the banjo, so he didn't play it much. And with all the dust and working all along, his throat got canked up and he couldn't sing. And Ben, when he came home, he'd just sit there. And then Vine would come behind him and start massaging his shoulders. And one day Ben said, "Vine, it sure would be nice to have some children, because they had been trying, and for some reason it won't take it. And finally she had to think quick. She said, well, Ben, if we had children, wouldn't be able to work as hard to find, to save money to buy my freedom. Ben, he said, well, Vine, I believe we could have stood for that. Well, as time went on and time went on, Ben, he thought he had enough money. So he went up to the Master Raymond. He knocked on the door. Master Raymond said, come on in. He came in and he said, Master Raymond, I just want you to check the books to see how much money I done saved for Vine's free papers. Well, Master Raymond, he opened the books and he said, look like you got about $230. He said, $230? Huh. So then he reached in his pocket, took out some money. He said, count this up, sir. Well, Master Raymond, he started tapping on his pipe. He said, oh, you got some more money, huh, Ben? So he took it and started counting out. He got to $280, $290, $300. And Ben said, $300, that's it, ain't it? That's it, ain't it, Master Raymond? Mr. Raymond sat back, tapped his paper. He said, Ben, I don't know. I thought I told you $350. He said, $350, my God. But then Ben reached into his other pocket, because Ben was raised to not say all you see and tell all you know. So he reached in, he said, there you go, sir, count that up. Then Master Raymond stopped tapping on his pipe, looked at him kind of cockeyed, took the money, started counting. He got up to $330, $340, $350. Ben said, that's it, ain't it? That's it, ain't it? Well, that was it. Well, when Ben got back, they killed one of the fattest calves, and they had this great big old party. and then the next day, Master Raymond went and drew up the free papers and gave them to Ben. Then when Ben, he come home and he said, Vine, he said, I got something for you, my dear. And he took out them papers and he said, here you go, Vine. Says right here, given to my beloved wife, Vine, from her beloved husband, Ben. There you go. Vine said, I can't take no precious document as that. He said, go ahead, you take this. And whenever you feel like everybody else, you take this here out and you read it. Because this here means that you's free. Oh, they hugged and kissed all night that night. Next thing you know, Ben, he went to ask Master Raymond how much it would cost for his freedom. He was told $500. By God, he said, that's a lot of money. But Ben, he wanted to get his freedom too. Now, when this was going on, Vine, she started changing. Well, first, she was walking by the children praying, and the children was just playing, and they walked by and say, hey, Miss Raymond, hey, Miss Vine Raymond. And Miss Vine said, excuse me, children, would you call me? She said, you Vine Raymond, you the one who got her freedom, you Vine Raymond. He said, no, children. Raymond was my name when I was a slave. I was free now. I can pick whatever name I want. Y'all children call me Vine Allen. Well, why are we gonna call you Vine Allen? You've been Raymond's wife. She said, children, you can call me Miss Vine Allen, thank you. Well, word started getting around that Vine was starting to change. Not just that, but Vine started associating with a lot of the free folks and won't associate with the enslaved as much. Matter of fact, she started talking a lot with the Johnson family. See, there was a free Black family called of 4 boys and 1 woman. Nice looking boys, nice hair, good teeth, mulatto looking too. But anyhow, word just got around that she started associating with different people. And then the old people would come around and say, you mess with her, you married her because she's pretty? Shouldn't marry a woman just because she's pretty. She'll comb your hair with a wagon wheel. Oh, there ain't nothing but trouble you married a pretty woman. But Ben said, but I think I love her. One night, they were sitting at home and Vine, she was sewing. And Vine said, Ben, you ever thought about going north? Ben said, oh no, Vine, I ain't never thought about going north. Why would I want to go north? She said, there's a lot of opportunities for free colored folks in the north. I heard about it. Cy Johnson, he told me, he said, Cy Johnson. She said, oh yeah, Cy Johnson was the handsomest of the boys. Cy Johnson, he was just telling me that there's a lot of opportunities. He said, Cy Johnson, huh? She said, ain't nothing about no Cy Johnson. I was just wondering if you get your freedom, well, won't we just go north? Well, the word started getting around. Master Raymond called Ben up to the house, and because he had heard about all this talk, and he said, Ben, if you hear that that Vine is changing a little bit, and that if he wants to go get your freedom, I don't know why you'd want to do it. And Ben said, no, I was born in the South. I probably died in the South. I don't even want to give it much thought. Well, as soon as Ben left Mr. Raymond, he went home. And when he walked into their cabin, it looked like everything was moving. Things was changing in the room. And then Ben, he looked over in the corner, and over in the corner was a chest that Bonnie was packing up in. And Ben, he went and sat down in the chair and started looking around, and everything had been moved. And then Vine, she walked in the door, and she walked in and saw Ben didn't pay much mind, went on about her business, just continuing to pack. Oh, and Ben, he put his head in his hands. He started crying. And then all of a sudden, there was a knock on the door, and in walked Cy Johnson. Cy Johnson said, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everything was in order. You got your papers, Vine? Vine, she reached in her bosom and took the papers out and gave them to Cy Johnson. He looked at him, he said, yep. Yeah, it says right here, given to my beloved wife, Vine, from her beloved husband, Ben. Yeah, that's in order. She signed and all that. Yeah, make sure you got this in the morning. I'll see you in the morning. Bye, Ben. And Cy Johnson, he walks out. Oh, Ben, he really started crying now. But Vine started looking at them papers, and for some reason, that's the first time she really heard what was written on that paper. Given to my beloved wife, Vine, from her beloved husband, Ben. Given to my beloved wife, Vine, from her beloved husband, Ben. Oh, Ben, he really started crying now. And then it finally hit Vine. And she started looking around, and everything around her that she could see reminded her of Ben. While the chest that she was packing up, Ben made it for her and said that he wanted her to have it so that if she go traveling, she could travel like the white folks. And Ben had made that the throw that was on the floor just 2 weeks after they got married. And the rocking chair in the corner, Ben had cut the seat so that her butt would fit just right in it. But she couldn't get them words off that paper, given to my beloved wife, Vine, for her beloved Ben. And then she said, Ben, it's these free papers, ain't it? Ben, he really cried now. He said, Ben, it's these devilish free papers, ain't it? And then Ben, he really started heaving. And before Ben could do anything about it, Vine had walked over to the fireplace, crumbled them up, and threw them in the fire. She watched them free papers burn. And as they burned, she said, there you go. Given to my beloved husband, Ben, from his beloved wife, Vine. You know, it ain't hard to find the Raymond's house no more. They got 4 boys. And even if you don't see the boys running around, you know that it's Ben's quarter, because he got his fingers back and now he plucks on his banjo and sing that song. And that song, you probably sang it, just didn't know where it come from. And every time you sing it, you got to think of Vine and her free papers. And y'all know the song that go, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. You know, Vine's Free Papers teaches us a lesson. And it's really Paul Laurence Dunbar speaking to future generations, as well as his, and as well as those that will come after us. The simple fact that Vine had to look around to see what was important. And that's where we are today. We all need to sit back and look around. And maybe we've been at home too much looking around. But the bottom line is that this is what's important. The family is important. Your grandmother is important. The ones that you don't see are important. Sometimes we need to just sit down and look around because we are important. Paul Laurence Dunbar gives that to us. Verne papers can be found in a book called The Strength of Gideon, along with other stories. Thank you. Next will be Dr. Joanne Braxton. Dr. Joanne Braxton is the Francis L. and Edward L. Cummings Professor of the Humanities Emeritus at for the College of William and Mary. She's the founder of the Braxton Institute for Sustainability, Resilience, and Joy. She's also the Eastern Virginia Medical School adjunct professor, and as well as the United Church of Christ minister with ministerial standings. Congratulations, Dr. Braxton. And she's also a fellow for the Hastings Center. I've known Joanne for many years, and Joanne is also the author, and she may speak on it, of the collection of Paul Laurence Dunbar's poems. And I've now introduced you to Joanne Braxton.
Howdy, honey. Thank you so much for including me in this 33rd annual memorial tribute to our beloved Paul Laurence Dunbar. It's a joy and a privilege to be with my friends, Dylan Pritchett and Granddaddy Junebug, and Mrs. Laverne Ski, whom I've never met in person, but we've collaborated on a number of things. It's the first time I have the opportunity to see your beautiful face. I've been asked to read one of Dunbar's. This is my work supporting bringing back Mr. Dunbar. And the story I was asked to tell was how it came into being, which was I was teaching the poetry of Paul Laurence Dunbar at the College of William and Mary year after year after year, and there was no collected poetry of Paul Laurence Dunbar in print. So one day I just got tired of that at the Xerox machine, and then did the work to produce this collection with all the variants of his known poems at that time. And it was simply a necessity to be able to teach this healing work that had been healing for me, that I knew belonged in the classroom. And that is a story for the time of 1993. But I do appreciate Dylan bringing forward the importance of Dunbar's poetry as medicine for our time. If I had more time, and if we were in a seminar, even though there's another person who's going to read We Wear the Mask, and it will be interpreted in different ways, I would ask that we could read We Wear the Mask and Sympathy together. In the opening to the introduction of the collected poetry published in 1993, I quoted Robert Curlin, who said that Dunbar, who had written that Dunbar was a prophet of a new generation, and true, he was. He helped bring forth the aesthetic conditions that made the Harlem Renaissance or the New Negro movement possible. He was a prophet of a new generation aesthetically, but he is a prophet for our time as well. What do you mean we wear the mask? Are we wearing the mask? We are wearing the mask. And what is behind that mask as we walk down the street, as we look through the glass windows where our loved ones may be? And I'm here as a scholar and a minister to say to you that I, as a clinical chaplain, have recited poetry with dying individuals in the hospital, where I would say one line of a Dunbar poem and they would repeat another line, the next line of the Dunbar poem from memory. Poetry is medicine. Dunbar is a poet for our time. With our torn and bleeding hearts, who has not been touched by COVID-19? Who has not been touched disproportionately? The person who was reciting that poem back to me 5 years ago, before COVID, was a nurse, had been a nurse, and had contracted MRSA while serving as a nurse. And there we were in an isolation room together. But Paul Laurence Dunbar's words were lifting her spirit, healing her spirit. And today, as I use poetry and narrative to work with our healthcare workers who are suffering, I bring forth the work of Paul Laurence Dunbar and all that is contained in the words, "We wear the mask." To take it just a step further, consider the poem Sympathy, which I will read for you today, the last line of which is, "I know why the caged bird sings." A line that many people associate with Maya Angelou because she chose that as the title for her first autobiography after her friend Abby Lincoln read the manuscript and said to her, "This reminds me of Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, Sympathy." But why was the poem Sympathy so important to Maya Angelou? Because when she was a little girl, she had an experience that traumatized her and made her an involuntary mute. She couldn't speak as a result of what had happened to her when she was 8 years old. I'm treading lightly here because there may be children on this call. And so I ask parents to revisit Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings" and interpret for yourself. But she attached herself to the words of Dunbar's poem, and they helped to heal her and bring her back to her own voice. Sympathy. I know what the caged bird feels, alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes, when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass, when the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and a faint perfume from the chalice steals, I know what the caged bird feels. I know why the caged bird beats its wing till its blood is red on the cruel bars. For he must fly back to his perch and cling when he fain would be on the bough a swing. And a pain still throbs in the old scars. And they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wing. I know why the caged bird sings, ah me, when his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his bars and he would be free, it is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the caged bird sings. Dunbar siblings, I thank you so much for the blessing of the invitation to be with you today. And looking forward, let us remember that June 2022 will be the 150th anniversary of the birth of Paul Laurence Dunbar. I look forward to seeing you in Dayton. God bless.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Dr. Braxton, for that wonderful, wonderful contribution to this program today. You look wonderful. I haven't seen you in years, and looks like you found a fountain of youth. Maybe you could share it with us. We'll just put our little toe in there. We won't put our big toe, just a little toe. But thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you for reminding us of Dunbar's brilliance and echoing his work as medicine, just like Dylan had said. And Dylan, I want to thank you as well for Viney's Papers, for bringing that to life. And you said something, Dr. Braxton, that reminded me, my grandmother read Dunbar to me when I was 3. She read A Cabin Tale all the time. And when she got to the point where she had to be in assisted living and her memory was leaving her, I would do the same thing. I would start that, want a story, just hit that. She'd say, where you think I get a story at? And now I'm doing that with my mother, who's 86, and I'm doing it with her. I'll give her a line and she brings it right back to me. So hopefully when my time comes, someone will give me my prescribed dosages of Dunbar's verse. But again, thank you, Dr. Braxton. Now I'm gonna bring another sister here. When I say sister, she's really like a sister to me. She's a beautiful sister as well. She loves Dunbar as much as I think we all love Dunbar, those who have studied his work and who have committed his work to memory. She's a poet and a storyteller who hails from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and has presented over 27 years of Paul Dunbar's spoken word in her one-woman performances. Her Brother Dunbar performance workshops is published in Literacy Development in the Storytelling Classroom. She has arranged 10 of Paul Dunbar's poems to jazz, soul, calypso, country, and hip hop music. She has presented Dunbar to a new generation throughout the United States, Germany, Trinidad and Tobago, and Zimbabwe. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome to you my good friend, my sister, my cousin, Oni Lasana, doing Dunbar as Elias's mother, and she will be presenting When They Listed Colored Soldiers.
It was 3 long years into that day's Civil War before they listed for the colored soldiers. My husband, Elias, he went off to fight in that war and he didn't come back. He was a good man. And I remember some just like it was yesterday when they listed for the colored soldiers and my Elias went to war. They was talking in the cabin and they was talking in the hall. But I listened kind of careless, not thinking about it all. And on Sunday too, I noticed they was whispering mighty much, standing along the roadside when they let us out of church. But I didn't think about it till the middle of the week when my Lias, he come to see me. But somehow he couldn't speak. And then I see it all in a minute when he come to see me fall. They had listed for colored soldiers and my Lias on the wall. I hugged him and I kissed him. And I begged him not to go. But he told me that his conscience, it was calling to him so, and he couldn't bear to linger when he had a chance to fight for the freedom they would give him and the glory of the right. So he kissed me. And he left me when I promised to be true, and they put a knapsack on him and a coat all colored blue. So I give him Pap's old Bible from the bottom of the drawer. When they listed colored soldiers and my lives with the wall. I taught all the weary miles he would have to tramp. And I couldn't be contented when they took him to the camp. While my heart it not broke with grieving till I see them on the street. Then I felt like I could go and throw my body at his feet. His buttons were shining and his face was shining too. And he looked so strong and mighty in his coat of soldier blue that I hollered, "Step up, Manny." Though my throat was sewing raw when they listed colored soldiers and my Lias went to war. Old Miss cried when Massa left her, and young Miss mourned her brother Ned. And I never knew they's feelings was the very words they said when I told them I was sorry. They had done get up they all, and they only seemed more prouder that they men's had heard the call. Both my masters left in gray suits, but I loved the Yankee blue. And I felt that I could sorrow for the losing of them too. But I couldn't, because I didn't know the half for what I saw. 'Twere they listed colored soldiers and my Lias with the wall. Master Jack came home all sickly. He was broke for life, they said. And they left my poor young master somewheres on the roadside, dead. When the women cried and mourned him, I could feel it through and through. 'Cause I had a loved one fighting in the way of danger too. Then they told me that they laid him somewheres way down south to rest, with the flag he fit for shining there across his breast. I cried, but then I reckoned that's what God had called him for when they listed for colored soldiers and my Lias went to war. Thank you kindly.
Thank you so much, Oni, for that wonderful rendition of When They Listed Colored Soldiers. What attracted me most to Dunbar's work, and you heard it right there as Oni presented it, was the truth. It's unadulterated. This is our history. Dunbar's mother and father were both enslaved, and Dunbar knew how his mother loved poetry. And he would take the stories that he heard from his mother and father and those people in the neighborhood, and he would take those stories and put them down in a poetic verse. So these are truths. This is what really happened. This is our history. So that's why it's so important that we honor him and honor his work at this time, the last day of African American History Month. And as a side note, once we get those Harriet Tubmans on the 20, we're gonna push for African American History Year. You heard it first from me. And that beautiful music that was accompanying Oni was Ashokan Farewell by Jay Unger, which was used with the permission of Swinging Door Music. And speaking of beautiful music, it is my pleasure now to introduce a sister who, she's my new best friend now because she lives right next door to the Paul Laurence Dunbar house in Dayton, Ohio. She is a spoken word artist, actress, founder of the Right Life Village, and I'm spelling that W-R-I-T-E, Right Life Village organization, where young people can express themselves creatively without judgment, bias, or fear through poetry. Recently, Slate filmed 5 graceful shifts in the Dunbar house, which speaks to the mask we wear to hide from the stigmas of diagnosed mental illness. Slate can also be seen on a TED Talk, addressing a life of creative freedom. It is my pleasure to bring to you a fellow Dunbarian, Slate. You have to unmute yourself.
I'm muted. I would like to agree with Mr. Dylan and Dr. Braxton that Dunbar's poetry is certainly medicine. I know in this time of COVID-19, police brutality, racism, isolation, and quarantine, it can be somewhat difficult to articulate one's feelings. As a survivor of mental illness, I found my own self struggling to find balance many a night over the last 30 years. But I am thankful to have been introduced to the writings of our great communicator, Paul Laurence Dunbar, earlier on, and more intensively in recent years. With God on my side and the gift of poetry, I have discovered a way to cope without causing any undue harm. No matter what he faced, Dunbar was always eloquent in bringing forth the truth. Everything isn't always what it seems, and all that glitters ain't gold. Being prideful and proud are two very different things. Dunbar was humble and honest. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It shades our cheeks and hides our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile and mouth with myriad subterfuges. Why should the world be overwise and counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask.
Thank you, Slate, for that wonderful rendition of We Wear the Mask. On August the 22nd of 2020, I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about We Wear the Mask, and I started playing around with it in my head and got up and wrote this little piece. I just reworded it, Dunbar's variation of it because of what was going on in this country. And I said, we wear our mask to protect lives. It blocks the contagion so the virus dies. This inconvenience we do for humankind with hearts and souls and conscious minds while washing our hands and being socially distant. Why are the naysayers being underwise when hundreds of thousands have lost their lives? Nay, let them only see us while we wear our mask. 45 surmises and the pandemic spreads before our eyes. He lies and lies, and millions get infected, and the death tolls rise. Agent Orange and his cronies need sooner think otherwise. We wear our mask. And for those of you who don't wear your mask, and since it's Sunday and Dunbar wrote a 4-line verse that shows his comedic side, I'm going to give you a quick piece called Theology, where he said, there is a heaven, forever day by day, the upward longing of my soul doth tell me so. There is a hell, I'm quite as sure, for pray, if there were not, where would my neighbor go? I want to say that for those who don't wear the mask, because as I sit here today, I done caught that virus from somebody. I'm in quarantine as I speak. Now, I didn't mean to say that, but I did. Anyway, Dunbar was a pistol. Anyway, Dunbar was a reader and a ferocious reader. And one of his favorite poets was the Hoosier poet, James Whitcomb Riley. And so this next piece I'm having presented by my good friend Charlotte Blake-Alston is called The Spelling Bee. It's in the style of James Whitcomb Riley. Now, let me tell you a little about Charlotte. Again, she is one of my favorite all-time storytellers from the minute I heard her open her mouth. And then I found out she loved Dunbar the way I did and grew up on Dunbar. Man, I really fell in love. But she is an internationally acclaimed storyteller, narrator, and librettist who has performed in venues across the United States and abroad. She says she cut her storytelling teeth on Parlance Dunbar at 6 years old, when her father handed her the complete poems and had her read in the morning. A lot of folks know it as Last, Best of Lord. She began reciting his poems in front of folks then, and this here many years later, she still credits that moment as the seeds for her storytelling journey. Please Google charlotteblake-alston.com, and you will see the many, many things that she has done over her course, her wonderful career. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my good friend, Charlotte Blake-Alston.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's just, boy, this is like my father's dream to have us gather together and celebrate Paul Laurence Dunbar and his work. And just kudos to everybody who is part of this, all of you who have gathered. My praise and thanks to A Slate Sister Braxton for speaking mask and sympathy like the hymns they truly are. At 6 years old, when my father handed me that book, and I was reading it as Dunbar had written it, I had no difficulty reading the dialect because it, in my head, sounded like the melody and the rhythm and the cadence of my great aunts and uncles. And his work is full of the richness of the multi-layers that make up who we are as a people. It's filled with humor, pathos, but I hope that if you have not taken a look at his work, that you'll revisit it. Take a look at his poem that he wrote for Frederick Douglass after Frederick Douglass dies. Take a look at Antebellum's sermon. Those pieces they still have relevance today with all of the issues that we have still been carrying on our backs all these years. But one of the things that was really important to people post-enslavement was learning to read, was becoming literate, because they were forbidden to learn how to read or write by law. We are the only group of people in this country who were forbidden by law to learn how to read or to write. You could be severely and brutally punished if you were caught learning how to read. So after that time, people would learn how to read. Sometimes adults would be in the side by side with children and learning how to read words. They learned how to read the Bible. Sometimes the church served as the schoolhouse. Churches built schoolhouses for their children. And sometimes the church or the schoolhouse was the gathering place. And there were many social events there. And one of them was a spelling bee sometimes. And this is a poem. It's essentially a young man, an older man actually, who was reflecting back on one of those times when they all went to gather for a spelling bee.
I'll never shall forget that night when Father hitched up Dobbin and all us youngsters clambered in and down the road went bobbing to school, where we was kept at work in every kind of weather, but where that night a spelling bee was calling us together. 'Twas one of heaven's banner nights. The stars was all a glitter. The moon was shining like the hand of God had just then lit her. The ground was white with spotless snow. The glass was sort of stinging, but underneath our roundabouts, you bet our hearts were singing, because that spelling bee had been the talk of many a precious moment. The youngsters always wild to see just what the precious show meant, and we whose years was in our teens was little less desirous to get into the meeting so's our sweethearts could admire us. So on we went, so anxious for to satisfy our mission that Father had to box our ears to smother our ambition. But boxing ears was too short work to handle our arriving. He just turned around, smacked us all, kept right on the driving. Well, soon the schoolhouse hove in sight, the windows beaming brightly, the sound of talking reached our ears and voices laughing lightly. It puffed us up so full and big that I just bet $1 there wasn't a fella there but felt the strain upon his collar. So down we jumped and in we went as sprightly as you make them. Well, something grabbed us by the knees and straight began to shake them. For once within that lighted room, our feelings took a canter and scurried to the zero mark as quick as tam o'shanter, because there was crowds of people there, both sexes and all stations. It looked like all the town had come and brought all their relations. First I saw was Nettie Gray. I thought that girl was dear and gold, and when I got the chance, you bet I edged up near. And Farmer Dobbs' girl was there, the one that Jim was sweet on, and Cyrus Jones, and Amanda Smith, and Faith and Patience Deaton, and then Parson Brown and Lawyer Jones were present, all attention, and just piles and piles of other folk, too numerous to mention. The master rose and briefly said, good friends, dear brother Crawford, to spur the pupils' minds along, a little prize has offered. To him who spells the best tonight, or it may be her, no telling, he offers as a just reward this precious work on spelling. A little blueback spelling book with fancy scarlet trimming. We boys devoured it with our eyes. So did the girls and women. He held it up where all could see, and on the table set it. And every speller in the house felt mortal bound to get it. At his command, we fell in line, prepared to do our duty, outspell the rest and set them down and carry home that booty. 'Twas then the merry times began, the blunders and laughing and nudges and nods and winks and stale good-natured chaffing. Old Uncle Hiram Dane was there, the closest man a living, whose only bugbear seemed to be the dreadful fear of giving. His beard was long, his hair uncut, his clothes all bare and dingy. It wasn't 'cause the man was poor, but just so mortal stingy. And then he sat by Sally Riggs, a smiling and a smirking, and all his children left the home a digging and a working. A widower he was, and Sal was thinking that she'd wing him. I reckon he was wondering what them rings of hern would bring him. And when the spelling test commenced, he up and took his station of spelling with the best of them to beat the very nation. And when he spelled some youngster down, he turned and looked at Sally and said, you know, the teacher nowadays can't be in no great valley. But true enough, the adage says pride walks in slippery places. For soon a thing occurred to put a smile on all our faces. The laughter just kept rippling out, and teacher couldn't quell it, because when they give out charity, old Hiram couldn't spell it. But laughter's catching, and it throw some others off their bases. Folks would miss the very word that seemed to fit their cases. Piccolo Jessa Lee come near the house upsetting by putting in a double K to spell the word coquette. And when it come to Cyrus Jones, it tickled me all over. Him setting up the man to Smith and got sat down on a lover. But Lawyer Jones, of all grown men, did surely look the gonest when he found out that he forgot to put the H in honest. And Parson Brown, whose sermons were too long for toleration, caused lots of smiles by missing when they give out condensation. Well, one by one, they give it up. The big words kept a landing till me and Nettie Gray was left. The only ones are standing. 'Twas then my inward strife began. I guess my mind was petty. I did so want that spelling book. But then to spell down Nettie just sort of went against my grain. I somehow couldn't do it. And when I get a notion fixed, I'm great on sticking to it. So when they give the next word out, I hadn't ought to tell it, but then 'twas all for Nettie's sake. I missed so she could spell it. She spelled the word and looked at me all loving like, and Mel, I tell you, sent 100 pins of shooting through a fella. Of course, I had to stand the jokes and chafing at the fellas, but when they handed her that book, I vow I wasn't jealous. We sung a hymn. Parson Brown dismissed us like he oughta. For law, he learned a thing or two and made his blessings shorter. 'Twas late and cold when we got out, but Nettie liked cold weather, and so did I. So we agreed we'd just walk home together. We both were silent, for of words we never had a surplus, till she spoke out quite sudden, like, "You missed that word on purpose." Well, I declare it frightened me. At first I tried denying, but Nettie, she just smiled and smiled. She knew that I was lying. Says she, that book is yours by right. Since it never could be. And there I stuck. And well, she understood me. So we agreed that later on, when age had give us tell, we'd join our lots and settle down to own that book together.
Yes, 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 yes. You see this big smile on my face? Oh my goodness, it's one of my favorite Dunbar poems. It's always a crowd pleaser whenever it's told. And Charlotte, that was an excellent, excellent, excellent rendition of the spelling bee. Beautifully done. Thank you so much, my sister. All right, come on, Reggie, get back on here with me. Let's do this. Reginald Harmon. Let's hit it. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, you start it. Seen my lady home last night. Held her hand and I squeezed it tight. Heard her sigh, a little sigh, seen a light gleam from her eye, and a smile go flitting by. Heard the wind blow through the pine. The mockingbird was a singing fine. And my heart was beating so when I reached my lady's door that I couldn't bear to go. So I put my arm around her waist, raised her lips and I took a taste. Love me, honey, love me true, love me much as I love you. And she answered, course I do. A Negro love song, Jump Back, Honey, Jump Back. Thank you, Brother Reginald. Thank you, my friend. Little history on that story. That particular poem was written, Dunbar was working as a waiter in a kitchen, and they had one swinging door that came back and forth, and he would be carrying a tray. And they had that one door, they had to kick that door open and tell the people, make sure nobody's there, jump back, honey, jump back. And they would be talking about their, what happened the night before and telling stories about what they did the night before and what they, you know, that kind of thing. So that's how that poem came about. Just living life, man, just living life. All right, now I'm going to bring back my good friend from Cincinnati, Ohio, Brother Ralph Moon, to give us Where the Rainbow Ends.
Okay, let me lead into this. One of Dunbar's talents, among other things, was the ability to write in different themes, different perspective, different voices. And at the introduction, they mentioned the fact that I found a book that belonged to my grandparents, and when I opened it up, it fell on this page. And the poem is called A Place Where the Rainbow Ends. And over the last 35 years, as I've studied Dunbar and I've gone to the Ohio Historical Society, I've gone to the Dunbar House, I performed with Miss Ski, I've met Mitch and a lot of other people along the way. I realized that, like most of us, when we went to school, we learned about Shakespeare and Sir Francis Bacon and all kind of people like that. But it wasn't until I got immersed in Dunbar that I began to understand, that I began to have the knowledge of myself as an African American. And I will put Dunbar up against Shakespeare and all these other people who claim to be great writers and great poets and everything like that. And we should honor and revere him. So, having said that, this poem epitomizes the place where all God-fearing people begin to believe that they will arrive after a good life and adhering to the dictates and, you know, things of God. And it goes like this. There's a fabulous story full of splendor and glory that Arabian legends transcends. Wealth without measure and coffers of treasure, it's a place where the rainbow ends. All have sought it and many would have bought it with the blood we so recklessly spend. But none has discovered or none has uncovered this place where the rainbow ends. Oh, they've sought it in battle and even where the rattle of dice with man's blasphemy blends. But however persuasive, it still proves evasive, this place where the rainbow ends. Now I yearn for my pleasure and I yearn not for treasure, though gold has a power it lends. And I have a notion to make without motion for this place where the rainbow ends. Your pot may hold pottage, your house can be a cottage that a humble contentment defends. But spite of the scoffer, this still fills the coffer at the place where the rainbow ends. It is where care shall be quiet and love will run riot. And I can find wealth with my friends. So truce to the story of the splendor and the glory. Where? At the place where the rainbow ends. God bless and keep you, everyone.
Thank you, Brother Ralph. Thank you, Brother Ralph, for that beautiful rendition of The Place Where the Rainbow Ends. And I sure have found wealth today with my friends. I can tell you that. Before I bring on my favorite person in the whole wide world relating to Paul Laurence Dunbar, We were talking earlier about the relevance of the poetry of Paul Laurence Dunbar today. And I would be remiss if I did not say the #1 relevant poem today for me is called Justice. And I ran across Benjamin Crump, and I ran across one of the sisters, did a program, one of the young sisters that started the Black Lives Movement. And I had to tell him this poem. It's very brief. And he said, it's called Justice, where he simply said, enthroned upon the mighty truth, within the confines of the laws, true justice seeth not the man, but only hears his cause. Unconscious of his creed or race, she cannot see, but only weighs. For justice with unbandaged eyes would be oppression in disguise. Black Lives Matter. And that's so relevant today. There's no justice here. Now, it is my privilege and honor to bring to you one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. She's like a sister to me. She's like a mother to me. She's like one of the dearest people I've ever met in my life, because she loves Paul Laurence Dunbar the way I love Paul Laurence Dunbar. I mean, she will take a bullet for him just like I will. Her name is Laverne Keenan Ski. She was born in Florida, and Laverne was born to dance. As a young child, she begged her mother to find dancing lessons for her. Her mother could not find a local teacher who would take her as a student because she was Black. Her mother found an African-American dance teacher in Jacksonville, 55 miles away from Lake City, Florida, their hometown. So her mother then drove her to Jacksonville every Saturday morning for dance class. She dreamed of going to Africa one day and dancing through the Kalahari Desert. Laverne spent 4 years at her home by the sea with her focus on the wonderful dance department that often danced to poetry. The same Dunbar poetry that her mother would recite after church on Sunday afternoon on the side porch. Later, as a graduate student, she deciphered Dunbar's extensive works and came to understand the messages of independence, dignity, and freedom. Upon coming to Dayton, she was very happy because she knew she was coming to the home of Paul Laurence Dunbar. Her husband's military assignment, Frank, was just perfect for her. She joined the supportive volunteer group at the Dunbar House State Memorial, and then she was selected by the Ohio Historical Society a few years later to function as the site manager of the Paul Dunbar State Memorial, the first state memorial to memorialize an African-American man in America. There she served for 20 years with 20 years of joy and happiness. Miss Laverne Keenan Ski also portrays Holly Q. Brown, who was a dear friend of the Dunbar family. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and my pleasure to bring to you one of the finest Dunbarians I've ever known, Miss Laverne Keenan Ski.
Oh, thank you so much. And it is indeed a pleasure to follow after you, Mitchell. I'm happy to relate a few things about the Dunbars. I have to think about the passage because he loved so deeply, because he loved so long. God, in his great compassion, gave Paul the gift of song. Paul started demonstrating that passion for song at the age of 6. He started rhyming at the age of 4. And when Paul decided he would put those words together, and his mother encouraged him to put them together and make them sound just right. And he did. As he did that, he actually handed each finished piece to his mother. And she would take that new, found piece written by Paul and put it in a special box that she kept in the kitchen. Well, one day Paul came in and asked her to give him all of the pieces he had written because he thought he wanted to make a book. So she did so, and he published his first book. Oak and Ivy. And it was the first of 25 books that he would publish. He was just a prolific writer. You see, Paul was the one person who always kept a pencil with him, and he always had a pad. Anytime he saw something impressionable during the day, or he heard something on the elevator or in the community that he could put together and rhyme, he would write and then give it to his mother. In the year of 1982, Mother Dunbar was looking out of the window and she saw this mailman coming toward her house in the snow. She watched him walk carefully, and he stopped at her house. He turned and came up the steps, walked across the veranda, and rang her bell. She rushed down to the door, opened it, and the mailman had this box in his hands, his gloved hands. She just grabbed the box. And he said, "Who is this Mr. Dunbar with this stuff in this heavy box? Who is he? Is he a doctor? Is he a lawyer? What is his station in life?" And she said, "My boy, Paul, is an elevator boy. But as of today, he is a poet." It was Paul's mother who first gave him that designation at that point. And yes, he was, and our poet forever. Paul Laurence Dunbar wrote with rhythm. He thought of writing songs. Anytime he performed publicly, he gave a recital. Because if you look back in the Bible, you will find songs of Solomon. Songs were written. Actually, melody was never put to words until recent history. Most writings of wisdom we will find historically are songs. So anytime Paul gave his songs publicly, he dubbed it a recital. And he gave recitals across continents. Paul Laurence Dunbar was America's first African-American to be accepted by American literature. He wrote, "Because I have loved so deeply." And I like to say, and because Paul has loved so long, God in his great compassion gave Paul the gift of song. So it's almost as though his voice is still singing in his writings across the years. And actually, Paul Dunbar lived in a time when dialectical writing became endearing, like bringing up the old days. Dialect writing was very, very popular at one time. And just as Paul was beginning to write, so he started to write in dialect. He wrote in many, many dialects. In the Georgia dialect, he wrote in the Boston dialect. He wrote in the German dialect. He wrote in the Italian dialect. Paul learned on that elevator that he could listen to the conversation and identify. He'd listen closely to the diction and the articulation of words and then write immediately in that very same dialect and dedicate a poem to an important point that had really impressed him that day. Paul took that elevator and used it to his advantage, because after graduating from high school and having had articles printed in the local newspaper that actually featured some of his poems when he was in high school, would not give him a job after high school. He went looking for a job. There was just nothing available. And he was told constantly that because they just would not hire a Black person for the position, he had hoped to get a job as, an accountant assistant or a receptionist. He thought he qualified for a job because he had finished high school. And that was a time in history when a high school graduate was not common. Very few people had had 12 years of schooling and a high school diploma. Mother Dunbar, during the time, became determined to read. Paul instantly said, "I'm living on Summit Street. Therefore, I have reached the summit of my life." Mother Dunbar, on the other hand, decided to stress learning to read, because as a slave, she was not allowed the opportunity to learn to read. And how did she learn to read? Would you believe? She knew what time the children would be coming home from school. She would make sure she had gone to her kitchen that day and had made a batch of cookies. And then in the afternoon, as children were walking home from school, she would say, "I'll give you a cookie if you tell me what you learned at school today." And would you ever realize that the children would tell her, "I learned A, I learned C." She finally put the alphabet together. Then she started realizing how the alphabet singularly made a word collectively. And she taught herself to read basic words. She later went to night school because she was so eager to be able to read her Bible fluently. And Paul's mother was the central point of his life. As he traveled, he often took her with him. And frequently he would travel to a location and then send for her to come. That's what he did when he went to conferences at Hampton Institute. He made arrangements for his mother to join him and to stay on campus, because every year there would be a conference at Hampton that he attended. By and large, we can say that Paul Laurence Dunbar wrote every form of the language. He wrote novels, every literary form that is. He wrote poems, short stories, articles for newspapers and magazines, songs, and his first book, don't forget, was published by the United Brethren Publishing House. Paul achieved a brilliant career. He carved his place in history. And when he was stricken with tuberculosis, he decided he had already purchased the home that you're looking at in the picture there. He had already purchased that house for his mother. And that was the second house. It was a larger and better house for his mother. She was so pleased and so happy. But once he had tuberculosis, he tried moving to Colorado and living there for a while in that environment to improve his health. He actually became ashamed a little bit upon living in Colorado because he lived near an Indian reservation and he spent a lot of time there. And he had actually written somewhere years ago in his writings that he referred to the Indians as savages. And once he lived near that reservation and had interaction with the Indian community, he was so ashamed. But what he did, he cherished his experiences there. He learned to shoot a bow and arrow while in Colorado. He went back east and his illness was not getting better. So he wrote to his friends and let them know that he was coming home. In coming home, he and his mother lived together in the house because his wife had divorced him at that time. They were separated. The divorce had not been finalized. Paul actually realized at that time that he was terminal and death would probably be the direction that he was facing. He did sometimes try eating a whole onion as home remedies, and different people told him to do. Eat the onion with a glass of beer, and that will take away your tuberculosis. Well, it didn't happen. On February 9th, 3:30 in the afternoon, Paul died in the arms of his mother in front of the fireplace on the daybed that is in his loafing coat. And there with him were people from all over Dayton standing in the living room, standing outside the house, because word had gotten out that our Paul Dunbar is on his deathbed. And so many people came to bring greetings of concern and love. And there was even Dr. Bud Burns, Dunbar's personal doctor and very best friend growing up through the years. Oh, by the way, Dr. Burns was the first Black doctor to practice in Dayton. And he had taken Paul out frequently for carriage rides once he closed his office in the afternoons. However, on the day that Paul was passing, the pastor of his church, the AMA church, decided to read the 23rd Psalm, and Paul wanted to repeat it after him. And the pastor started reading the song in the Bible. And when he got to the line, yea, though I walk through the valley and shadow of, his eyes closed in that house on the word death. Paul is buried at Woodland Cemetery. Paul will forever live in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ski. Thank you, Mrs. Ski. Thank you, Mrs. Ski, for that historical journey on the life of Paul Laurence Dunbar. As you can tell, Mrs. Ski is has a plethora of information on Dunbar, and she's a historian of his life. And anytime I hear something about him, I run it by her, and she's like my fact checker. She's my Google when it comes to Dunbar. But I thank you so much, Mrs. Ski. You can tell her heart is in the Dunbar house and the Dunbarians, and anything to do with Paul Laurence Dunbar. At this time, I'm going to bring back my main man, Reginald Harmon, to close us out with his rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And by the way, Dunbar was very close with James Weldon Johnson and Rosamond Johnson, who wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing. So he was friends with Frederick Douglass. And of course, you know, he was classmates with the Wright brothers. And as Mrs. Ski said, it was important to have a high school education, a degree from high school. And for those of you who don't know, Orville and Wilbur never graduated high school, but they went on and did great things, as well as most of the people out of Dayton did. But Paul needs to be recognized, not only just in schools, but his work needs to be recognized. So let's come on out, Reg, and let's start blowing the saxophone. I want to thank Oni, Lasana. If y'all want to click on when I call your names. Oni, thank you so much for your heartfelt, all your work for the last 2 weeks for doing all of this. Miss Margaret Booz, we want to bring you back on. Thank you so much. Reginald, come on back up. Ralph Moon, come on, click back on your video, please. A Slate, thank you so much. And Island Pritchett, Dr. Joanne Braxton, Charlotte Blake-Alston, and of course, Mrs. Laverne Keenan-Ski. I've been your host, co-host today with Oni Lasana. My name is Mitch Capel, also known as Granddaddy Junebug, and we really appreciate y'all being here. We're looking at doing something, June 27th is Paul Dunbar's birth date. And as she stated, it'll be 150 years. So we're looking at doing something big coming up here. So stay tuned, y'all, and continue to follow and read Paul Laurence Dunbar's work. It's like a Bible. You'll find something for you. If you're down, it'll bring you up. If you're too high up, it'll calm you out. So put it to memory, put it in your heart, and share it with your children. Don't let this man.
If anyone show themselves to wave to us, and we can wave to you.
Yeah, everybody click on.
Show your face this time.
Yes.
All for coming. Come on, guys.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody. Let's say hello to
Link
one
abroad.
There you go.
Family, family.
Play it, brother Harmon. Play it.
Keep playing, brother. supposed to be standing up. We're supposed to be standing up, y'all. What we sitting down for? Stand up. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Spread the word. That was Reginald Harmon, wonderful musician.
It might be a good thing everybody didn't stand up too, Mitch.
You know,
Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, I had pants on. What you talking about?
we'd like to mention also that if any of you storytellers are out there or poets and you're interested in joining us in doing another Dunbar program,
yes,
look into your pieces, and we'd love to have you sometime in the future. We would love to invite all of you who love Dunbar as much as we do to come on, and we would just be a day doing Dunbar and sharing his poetry and his short stories.
Yes.
And so just keep in touch with us. Most of you that are on here know all of us. So just send us an email and let us know. So this little group today, we're sort of the Dunbar committee of the world, okay?
That's right. All right, let's go. Oh, look at my friend.
Let us know if you're interested in being with us. Thank you, Miss Ski. We couldn't have done it without you, sweetheart.
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
And maybe we even have like a question and answer. You know, we do
yes.
poetry, we talk, do some
Yes.
Q&A. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, anybody want to do Q&A right now? We've been on for 2 hours. We might need to go. I can't hold my water like I used to. I might have to leave y'all for a second. Like my dad used to say, I got to hurry up, go before I find out I already been. So I'll be right back.
I have to find a Dunbar piece to address.
We can always count on Mitch to give us some humor. He's a great comedian. He's really fabulous.
I would like, I tell you what'll get the conversation going. Someone share with us how you were introduced to Dunbar, say school-wise. Was it English teacher? Was it someone in the church? Was it, somebody share their story?
I think I might have to unmute everybody. Hold on. I think I had, if you can unmute yourself, if you can't, let me know. But you should be able to unmute yourself.
Only Wumi, you shook your head. Unmute yourself and share your story. Can you unmute yourself? Oh, you can't?
Oh, here, I'm going to unmute you. Sorry.
That's been a problem all the way through.
I'm going to do that.
No, thank you, Oni. Thank you. Miss Greer, Miss Greer, my English class at Mary High School. She was the one, but she was she was using it and having us to understand that this was only for dialect. We weren't to ever use the kind of language, but she wanted us to use the feeling of Dunbar. That's what I said too. Yeah. That's all you can say. That's all you can say. She was an English teacher in the Jim Crow South, and we were to be assimilated, and we weren't to use dialect. There you go.
The good thing she caught you when you were young.
Like Paul Dunbar either. She was from Louisiana. She was more leaning towards Langston Hughes. She was not a fan when I started learning his pieces. And I took her with me on a out on a farm one day with a bunch of school children. And when she saw me dressed as Liza's mother, the children looked at my mother, who was finely dressed in her fedora and sitting there. And the little girl said, is that your daughter? And she asked my mother, Were you born on a plantation? But Dunbar transcends all of that. He such a variety in his works. Anyone else want to speak? I unmuted everyone.
Yvette said she wants to.
Yeah,
Okay, she can unmute herself. I took off the
I have.
Mhm.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I got introduced to Dunbar as a very young child. My mother did not finish high school, but she wanted all of her kids, all 7 of us, to know and understand poetry. And she would go, we lived in Washington, D.C., and she would literally call the Library of Congress and have them send her copies of Paul Laurence Dunbar's poems. And she would make us on Saturdays perform poetry as part of the things that we had to do. We couldn't watch our little television about that big, we couldn't watch television until we recited a poem or told a story from Paul Laurence Dunbar. And we could not just recite it, we had to act it out, because she said poetry came from the heart, and you had to show who you were and who the poet was and what the poet was trying to say.
That's right.
And so that is how I got introduced. It started when I was about 4 years old, and it continued all the way through high school. So I am an absolute lover of Paul Laurence Dunbar because it brings back precious memories of sitting in the living room at my home, performing stories, performing poems for my mother and grandmother and great aunt. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
I would like to speak. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, oh, I was so happy to hear that. And I am now retired, but that doesn't mean that I have to quit Dunbar. It doesn't mean that I don't like Dunbar anymore. I heard Dunbar all my life. My mother embraced it. So I have started a Dunbar Memorial Association, one that will focus on beautifying Paul's grave, one that will focus on taking children, school children, to the grave and letting them plant the flowers, and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. And in other words, if you'd like to work with us, please write down my telephone number. It is 937-426-4085.
I would like to ask someone, and I want to preface this. Kathleen Leatherwood, I'm going to ask you to respond to this. In Williamsburg, a couple of years ago, Mitch came down to Williamsburg, and Joanne was there, and we had a something on his birthday where we had a buffet meal serving all of Paul Laurence Dunbar's foods, and we had a wonderful turnout. A gentleman showed up whose name is Roy Underhill. Now, Roy Underhill, you may have seen him as a craftsman that does woodworking on PBS. He was the first one to show up. He was the first one to buy a ticket. And I looked at Roy and I said, Roy, you know Dunbar? And he started reciting Dunbar. And then I said, where'd you learn that from? He said, my mother. This is a white guy. He said, my mother said I had to learn it. And my daddy made sure that I had all of Dunbar's books. He said, well, I know Dunbar. Almost to the point where I was going to ask him to get up and do a piece, And so I think that it's interesting when you have someone that didn't go to a Black school that learned Dunbar. And I think the sister is gone. No, Kathleen, how do you know Dunbar?
Oni, we were in Germany, and she was amazing, and we got together. And when I came back, that was in, 2000 or no, about 19 something anyway. So when we left Germany, we came back to Reston, Virginia. And I was teaching at an elementary school, and we brought her back so she could have all the kids that in my school could see her. And I am just a fan. If you can tell, this whole thing is, all of these are marked, and I just am so glad that you all did this. It was just amazing.
It was 1998.
That was it. There we go.
And I went to Germany with Diane Williams of Mississippi. And Kathleen had a young, little, handsome African-American little boy. I wanted to steal him. He looked like he was my son. And she had adopted him. He's a wonderful young man now. So we go way back. So thank you, Kathleen, for coming today.
Oh, I can't wait to see next year in the summer.
June.
I'll love it. Yeah.
I forgot to mention when Ms. Ski was talking about Dunbar's mother, I went and grabbed her picture. So y'all could see Paul Dunbar's mother. Matilda Jane Glass Murphy Dunbar is her name.
Thank you.
I went and grabbed her picture to put up.
I'd just like to add, I got to run off because I have a solo 90-minute, 75-minute performance after this.
Where? Can we see it?
First of all, I need to ask Miss Ski if I can be her niece. And then I wanted to just make sure to mention the role that the Black church played in highlighting anybody. I always say that the Black church was the arena for the display of the talent that was so abundant in our community. If they found out you sang, they found out you played the piano, they found out you played the violin, you found yourself on a program.
That's right.
So when my dad first handed me that book, I read that poem over and over and memorized it. That light bulb went on in him. And the first time I stood up in front of people reciting was at the Ladies Auxiliary Usher's Tea. And I was, listed as Charlotte. Well, now I have a reading by Miss Charlotte Blake. So, but the Black church also played a role in making sure that that people heard his work and heard the works of African-American writers and composers as well. So I'm gonna say goodbye. I gotta flip to my other setting on the other side.
Right.
Charlotte, we enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Before the schools were integrated, it was part of the curriculum that you had to memorize Dunbar or James Weldon Johnson or Langston Hughes. You had to memorize somebody and stand up in front of the school and recite. And that was part of it. And once the schools integrated, that got kicked to the curb. And that was the reason when I fell in love with Dunbar, that's why I started performing, because I didn't want his work to die. And I wanted to go around the country and let students and teachers and everybody else know who this guy was. And so that's been my passion. But yeah, that was part of it.
Hey Lynn, had Dunbar reached the Caribbean when you were in school? You're muted, Lynn. Unmute yourself, Lynn.
Oh, no, I was introduced to Dunbar. I was, I guess it was back in the 60s, 70s, when a lot of the Black poet, the last poets and Gil Scott Heron, and I started paying closer attention to poetry and discovered Langston Hughes. And then I think it was probably the first time that I really heard his poetry was when Mitch performed at the either the Black Festival in Baltimore, the first one, or one of those there, Philadelphia, the first or second one. And then I started finding some book. I have a few of his books here, some old books we got from a library.
Black festivals in the United States this year.
Yeah. So anyway, that's when I was introduced to his poetry being read aloud, and it was Mitch.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Glad to know that I was part of that.
Anyone else want to speak up?
Who would you say is comparable to Dunbar from where you're from?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I put him right up there with Langston Hughes and maybe Leroy Jones. Well, I'm Eric Buckeye now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel that Dunbar stood alone because he was before Langston. He
Oh, yes.
influenced Langston. So in his era, Dunbar stood on his own.
He's the only one.
There are some contemporary writers, Henry
Chestnut,
Franklin Bryant,
yeah,
James David
Chestnut,
Carruthers,
Brothers, right.
that were back in his time.
Yeah, but they're worth looking into as well. Brothers and
Chestnut.
Yeah, Charles Chestnut, yes.
Can I wade in for a second here?
yes, please.
Okay, just something I'd like to share with everybody. If you follow Dunbar's history, just before, well, he sailed off to England.
Yes.
To recite before the Savage Literary Society. And while he was there, his agent's daughter was in charge of his arrangements. And basically she never gave him a copy of the contract, and she went off and absconded not only with the proceeds, but left him
That's right.
in England to fend for himself. And then he had to send back to some of his benefactors, the group that lived in Toledo.
Mr. Thatcher, Charles Thatcher, the lawyer.
Thatcher, who was the attorney,
Right.
yeah, to get him back home. But while he was there, for some of those who've never read the poem, The Garret is an apartment at the top of a building where the only thing that you can see in either direction are the chimney on the houses on either side. The poem, The Garret, has the same meter as The Raven, you know.
Edgar Allan Poe, yep.
Right, all right, that's one. The second thing is he lived in Jacksonville, Florida, because him and James Weldon Johnson were friends. While there, and still to today, there is a Prince Hall Lodge named after Dunbar in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes.
And the final thing I want to say, and this is a hell of a connection. His mother was a Murphy.
That's right.
Before she married I won't say old man Dunbar, because he's about 19 years older than her. Well, I learned from Miss Ski, her brother-in-law was Isaac Murphy. Who's Isaac Murphy? The first jockey to win the Kentucky Derby twice.
Shut up.
That's right.
Shut up.
Right. Isaac Murphy. So they must have been, then not only were they from Kentucky, they had to have been around the Lexington area, because that's still the thoroughbred raising capital in the United States today.
Wow.
But Murphy was the first jockey, irrespective of the race, to win the Kentucky Derby twice. And if you ever go to Louisville and you go to Churchill Downs, they have a mural starting back in the 1800s, and they got him painted up there, followed by a guy named Jimmy Winkfield, who was the second brother to win the Kentucky Derby twice.
Wow.
I think that was, worth sharing with everybody, because I found so much in studying his life until his legacy is just endless. All right, thank y'all.
That agent that took him over to London, she was also Mark Twain's agent.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
Yeah,
Right.
she was Mark Twain's agent too.
That's exactly right. Only he didn't get stiff.
That's right.
Ah,
Sound like conspiracy to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, take them over there and you just,
Leave it.
drop them off.
Yes.
Have him off in London.
And I think the pay was was it $3 a week he was supposed to get paid? I think it was.
Something
Not
like
sure about the money. I'm not
that.
sure.
Off with all of the money, period.
Yeah, she left with all the
Yeah,
money.
she just kept it all. So.
She never took him to court.
Would you like to share?
Yes, I'd like to share. Sister Mafalda,
Hey, sister.
And a good dear sister to Oni. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. It was a wonderful program. I just want to thank you all and just say that I was introduced to Dunbar and was also the star dancer in Angelina while Oni Lasana recited the piece, and to see Angelina dance. And I just want to tell you that I'm so inspired coming from Georgia. Here's a little something in rhythm and song, as Mrs. Guy said that he wrote in rhythm and song. Y'all, I can't believe this. This is one of those moments. This is a real dog. It's not a filter. I can't play my drums. I'm trying.
That's not a harmonica. That's a dog whistle you got there.
He likes it.
5, 6,
You
7,
playing his song.
It hurts his ears. That's why he's acting up.
Playing my song.
Who let the dogs out? Anyway, thank you all so much. That's why this Zoom in the living room, it's a live thing. Anything can happen and go down. And I just want to thank you all so much. What a wonderful way to spend the last day of Black History Month, as well as in this community of Dunbarians. I learned so much. I was taking notes, and I wasn't going to stand up.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hi, this is
Everybody stand up. Zoom in the living room. Thank you guys. God bless.
This is Andrea in Dayton, Ohio, and I just want to say I love you all. I am definitely a supporter and have participated in many programs for Paul Laurence Dunbar past, and I look forward to having an opportunity to participate and do some readings in the future. So thank you all for organizing this fantastic program this afternoon.
How did you hear about it, Andrea? Thank you. You're welcome.
A. Slate is a very good friend of mine. And she invited me, and I totally
on the committee, so you're in good hands. Thank you.
Definitely. I look forward to seeing all of you again, and also Laverne Ski. I've known her for years and admire her history lessons and her beautiful presentations. So I just thank you, and of course Reginald Harmon. I know a lot of the people who presented today, so I just look forward to hearing more and hopefully participating in the future.
So what Dunbar pieces do you have memorized?
I was blessed when I was 13 years old. Bernice I. Sumlin was my godmother. She is now.
Bernice, yes.
But yes. Bernice invited me. I'm a lifetime member of Wayman AME Church, and Paul Laurence Dunbar was also attended and a member of the church. I was invited to recite the poem Compensation. And from there, I started writing. It was like just the experience of having the opportunity to recite the poem and participate in programming. And Miss Bernice was definitely an advocate and a beautiful person here in this community that supported education and supported the understanding and the readings of Paul Laurence Dunbar. So she really got me started. And from there, I have written some beautiful pieces, some plays. I have a LLC, Right to Dream, where we talk about the Paul Laurence Dunbar and also the Wright brothers. So it's not about me today, but I definitely wanted to just say hello. And I'm so appreciative of the efforts, and I look forward to joining you at some point in the future.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. You can't study Dunbar without turning into a poet yourself. I mean,
that's right.
I'm telling you.
So right. That is so right.
He'll make you pick that pen up.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mitch, you mentioned the Cabin Tale.
Yeah.
Have this book here.
Oh, Little Brown Baby. Yeah.
Yes. I remember reading that to my children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a second edition. There's hardly any first edition. I think Mitch got
first edition.
I've got all first editions except majors and minors.
If I got a first edition.
And I have all second editions.
I even got Open Ivy. Thank you, Ms. Ski. My house is I've got a plaque in front of my house. My house is named Oak and Ivy, y'all.
Yeah, we know, Mitch. We know.
My house is named Oak and Ivy. That's how Dunbar I am.
I gotta step my game up.
Would anyone else like to speak?
I wanted to say really quick, thank you, y'all, for having me. This was absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And I was going to say how I was introduced to Dunbar. I feel ashamed living so close and not officially being introduced to Dunbar until 15 years ago by Miss Ski. In school, I was briefly introduced to Dunbar. I grew up reading, I was writing. My fourth grade teacher knew I was writing and liked it. By fifth grade, they let me hear Shel Silverstein and read Shel Silverstein. In sixth grade, it was Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe, and the poem was Annabelle Lee. A sixth grade teacher named Miss Russ grabbed me and she said, "Child, no." She said, "Have you lost your ever-loving mind?" is what she said. And then she let me read in the morning. So it's lies, bless the Lord. Don't you know the days of, oh, that was real good. It was an entirely different world and one I could relate to.
Daylight all the shining in.
Yes, but I didn't get to really get to experience Dunbar until Miss Ski. I saw Miss Ski perform Negro Love Song, Jump Back, Baby, Jump Back. First thing she said when I walked in Dunbar house, "Jump back, baby, jump back." I said, "Ooh, wait." So that's how I was introduced. And I just thank y'all. I just love being a part of this, and I'm gonna get off of here, but I'm just grateful. I would love to keep being a part if y'all would have me, and just thank you. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Smitty, did you want to say something? We love you, Slate. You in this. We got you.
You got baptized by the best. Miss Ski baptized you, honey. She caught you up real quick.
I love y'all. See you.
I just like to mention that Dr. Braxton wrote me a letter a long time ago and told me that she just wasn't going to teach her class without Dunbar. And she needed this book to get through. And I worked with her, and she said today that she didn't know me. However, I met her at Stanford University when we had that Dunbar conference in California. And the conference lasted about 4 days.
Yeah.
I think Reginald did too. Reginald Harmon was there.
Yeah, I was there. I enjoyed it. It was very, very informative to become aware of how massive and how extensive his writings were. They came from all over the world.
Go ahead, Smitty. Smitty was trying to slip in there.
I just thank everyone so much for letting me be a part of it. Especially thank you, Oni, for pointing me in this direction. I think I'm a very new Dunbarian, I will say. So I was in the U.S. Navy for about 10 years. I got out, went back to school on my GI Bill. I started at the Community College of Philadelphia. This is where I found Dunbar. It wasn't given to me on a list or anything like that. I was walking around the school bookstore looking for books, and I came across Paul Dunbar's The Sports of the Gods.
Court of the Gods.
Something called out to me, and I just picked it up, and I read it, and it's a really great book. And then fast forward a bit, we had an open mic the other night at Toho for some poetry. Oni was there, and she mentions Paul Laurence Dunbar, and I'm like, no way, like I know that name. How do I know that name? And I go to my shelf and I'm like, yeah, it's really, and so I made the connection, and I reached out to Oni. She put out her email, and then she put me on to this event, which I'm in here. I'm in awe right now. Like I have such a feeling of like, wow, all the reciting and just the beautiful words. And I appreciate it so much, so much. And thank you all for having me. And I love it. I love it.
Oh man, what's your name, bro?
My name is Michael Smith, but everyone calls me Smitty.
Where are you from, Smitty?
Philadelphia is pretty much my hometown.
Philly. You know Napalm? You know Napalm the Bomb up there?
No.
I invited Napalm just 2 hours ago. I invited Napalm.
Okay.
Napalm. He lives in Jersey.
Okay, okay,
That's
my
why
bad.
he's
I
not
thought he was in
really
Philly.
on the Philly scene. That he only got on it with me, but he's in Jersey. But I'll let you know about Napalm City.
Smitty, I see a heavyweight belt behind you there, brother. What you do?
Nah, heavyweight, it's just featherweight. I was 145 for that one.
Featherweight. I hear you, bro.
I did some kickboxing and MMA for like 5 years, kind of like right after the Navy. But yeah, I got me a little belt.
Well, hey, look, bro, when we blow up, we're gonna need security. So
Well, he's from the city of where Rocky made it big. So
that's right.
I thought maybe I was one of the younger poets online, so maybe he is. But recently, with the first Black inaugural poet laureate, I hope that there was some young poets on today's program and are inspired.
Yes, we had a Slate. She lives next door to the Dunbar house. In case you missed her introduction, she lives next door to the Dunbar house.
Okay, yes.
Dunbar is not even about age. We welcome anybody. I plan on sitting in my rocking chair doing Dunbar to my grandchildren. So, and then you're the next youngest after Slate, Mafalda.
You know, I'm just a kid that'll never grow up, but I just want to thank you all, and especially with speaking, piggybacking off of what that gentleman just said. I'm sure you all are aware that they're now making it part. I think it's New Jersey, or is it Virginia, that's going to make African history and some of these writings a part of the curriculum. The first, can anybody chime into that?
Well, in Virginia, it is definitely part of the 1619 because that's Virginia anyway. You know, that's part of the initiative.
Rhode Island has also joined that.
Right, there's a few that's joining it.
Yeah,
and I recently heard,
the issue is
that's wonderful.
The issue is going to be how to teach it.
That's right.
And you know, and that's the big issue.
Well, maybe some of you should get on there and be a part of that, because they are calling for scholars and grassroots artists to join this journey of how to teach it. So please, I hope one of you definitely reach out to them.
I hope that happens too, because if it's not taught with a historical context, it will be put in a Eurocentric context.
That's
and
right.
it will be wrong.
Amen.
It will be wrong. It has to be some people here, Oni, Mitch.
That's right.
All of you.
Yes.
Somehow, because it won't be right.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
We've been talking about that because what's online, if you Google Dunbar and you listen to the people that are reciting him, it's garbage. I mean, it's like they have no clue. They have no clue what Dunbar is talking about. And so I think it's important for us to not only record it, not only to do that, but also to record it so people really understand what he's trying to do.
You know, when my kids were in high school, they both took AP English. The first teacher my son had, who's 5 years ahead of my daughter, I looked at the curriculum. I said, "You don't have Dunbar on here." She said, "Who's Dunbar?"
Right.
I said, "Where'd you go to school?" She said, "University of New Hampshire." I said, how many Black professors did you have? She said, "None." I said, "How many Black authors did you study?" She said, "Maya Angelou." And I started waiting for her to give me someone else, and she didn't. So I couldn't fault her because she was never exposed and didn't know it was there.
Right.
But at the same time, you got to agitate enough. So I pulled her out of there and I pulled my son out and gave him another teacher who at least had heard of Dunbar.
Right.
You know?
I believe with the way you all have talked here today.
Well,
the way you all have talked here today, you all are the ones. I just believe you are the ones. And if you created an educational Zoom thing.
I have my workshop is in my Brother Dunbar workshop is in the book. And what the book is, what it is, a little taste of it I did with Kathy over in Germany with the children, but the children actually perform his works. And it's published in this book. It's upside down. Why?
There you go.
You pulled the Trump on us that time.
We're not mentioning that. Dang. It's in this book. It's called Literacy Development in the Storytelling Classroom. And my Dunbar workshop, it's 5 different pieces where the children learn a standard poem for public speaking. Okay. They do They do a dialect poem for public speaking, and then they perform the standard poetry. So, and then We Wear the Mask is in this book. Nikki Giovanni edited. I'm doing We Wear the Mask. It's an audio book. Hip Hop Speaks to Children.
Awesome.
And I gave Nikki the idea because I rap I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, Sympathy, at the end of my program.
Bust some bars, Oni. Bust some bars. Bust some bars. I'll back you up.
Oh, no. We need the dog.
Yeah. Well, well, no, y'all, yeah, listen. Who said no?
I said,
hey, where's my mute button? Where's my mute? What you say, girlfriend? Let's do it.
Who are the children's that you all respect? Who are the children's historians that have written textbooks for children that you all respect? Put that with what Oni has and what different ones do you have. And I believe if you all got together, I believe with Miss Verne, and I believe you could pull it together in the right package. That's right.
Creating a curriculum.
I just mailed my workshop CD with the music and the words to 5 of the poems to Miss Laverne Ski, and I sent it to the sister Slate. She works with children right now. I've worked with children a lot. Me and Sister Mafalda had a performance group. We've been together almost 30 years working with children. And so Slate is going to actually implement the workshop with the children in Dayton. So we're trying, it's coming along. And if anyone's interested in the workshop, just email me and I can give them the music that goes to the actual pieces of Dunbar's poetry.
You might want to try to go to Carla Hayden, and she's the librarian of the Library of Congress. Yes. So she might be interested with that as well.
In what way?
Well, she has, every year they have another person to be, what is it? It's not just poetry, but
folk life, something like that.
It's a position. So right now, the person will go out, I think, next year. But it could be a poet.
What, Kathleen?
Well, they go around and they talk to people, to the schools. And,
the speakers, viewers with the Library of Oh, yes, that's nice. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Does she do Dunbar?
I don't know. Oh, wait, this current one is the very first Indian American.
All right, well, thank you for that information. I wrote down her name, but we're looking because many of us that we presented today are also poets, storytellers, and educators as well. But see, our education is out of the classroom. We're in the streets about the culture. So, Smitty, you want to say something?
Yes. One, I was wondering if you might have reached out to Janine A. Cook of Harriet's Bookshops in Fishtown, because I know she's doing big things and she has a lot of literature that promotes Blackness and being with and children's literature on top of that. And then I wanted to too bounce off what you were just saying is because even now, as I'm going through an institution to try to get my education, what my goal is to be able to run my own bookshop and small press when I'm all said and done, because I believe, and I'm a firm believer in this, that the change is not going to happen within the institutional confines. It's going to happen outside. So places like bookshops and places where the community gathers, and those children who wouldn't have the opportunity or access to the education are given it through the community, through bookstores and things of that nature. It's very near and dear to my heart doing this, because like that's my goal, is to build a bookshop that adds to the army of bookshops that are out there, because what did they say, the revolution is not going to be televised, it's all going to be underground, it's going to be through the bookstore and all that good stuff. And so like yes, absolutely, yeah.
Right. Hopefully we can share information via email, or there'll be some, maybe through Oni. We can, with the interest of time, maybe we can send in some more information and ideas. Yes.
Yes, we can, but
Yes.
I'm not the only one. We're working as a
But the host, yes.
you know,
Yes.
we're working as a team, as a committee, as far as Dunbar is concerned. Now, we all doing our own thing as well.
Right, as
As
people
far
are
as the
mentioning.
Dunbar
Right.
project, it's really can't be done without the teamwork of everybody who loves Dunbar.
Makes the dream work.
Thank you
I
so
see,
much.
Thank you, guys.
Benora. I see Benora Legault there. Benora, you want to throw your 2 cents in? She's one of our past presidents of the National Association of Black Storytellers.
Yes, she's
Throw some
executive
insight.
director.
You too, Martha.
Yeah, Martha Ruff, yes.
I thought she would look familiar. I met you in Cincinnati.
Yes,
Oh my
did.
goodness.
You did.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Everything was wonderful this afternoon. Of course, I always enjoy it. And I was first introduced to Dunbar by my mother, who grew up in New Orleans. And it was a requirement that when they were in school that you had to know Dunbar. And matter of fact, I understand that when they call the roll, that's how you answer the roll. You had to be able to
pick it up,
give Dunbar,
nice.
something from Dunbar and some other writers. And so she always talked about lies. Boy, if I come across that flow, you won't have no time to snow. I knew about that when I was 3 or 4, and always knew about that. But I think all of the things that you have been talking about are great ideas, and if you continue to follow this rim of thinking that you're doing and follow through, because many times there are great ideas, but we slow down when it comes to follow through. And I remember the book, the hip hop that you have, Oni, that you showed the book. Yes. I remember a couple of years ago, I got that book and gave it to my grandson in Chicago, and he was really excited about it.
I like that.
Yes, yes. So congratulations again to all of you. Enjoyed it. Everything was great. And if you have some information to share, we want to go out, send it to me and it can be put in the menu that goes out.
Talking about follow through, just so you know, it's only about 23 on here right now. So we're a little intimate group, which is nice. But we had up to 73 people with us today.
Wow,
okay.
And just so you know, my sister Venora, is that we pulled this together in about 2 weeks. So we talked about it about 2 weeks ago. But we talked about it. You hear what I'm saying? 2 weeks ago.
I got it.
I get an amen.
Amen. I just want to share that my experience was similar to others. I can't tell when I first heard Dunbar, with a grandmother who was a teacher in the early 1900s in Baltimore City, and a church family where I was encouraged to read. I know I heard Dunbar at some point, but my fondest memory is teaching Dunbar to my vacation Bible school class. And of course, just like everyone has said, in the morning was one that had to be done, and that was acted out. And just as Nora said, you know, they found out what it meant to say, give me them there sticks. To see them acting that out was a joy.
Whip you till you drap.
Just like a feather bed.
It looked like a feather bed.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I used to go into senior citizens places and do Granddaddy Junebug and do Dunbar stuff. And man, if I didn't do lies, bless the Lord, I got beat up with canes on the way out of there. Boy,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Bless the Lord. I mean,
when I do it, and I get my lias out the audience. So I always look for that little kid or that old man who ain't paying no attention. I say, come here, boy. Don't you hear me call? Get up here, lias. And some of them just run from me.
Well, I just want to mention that Slate has formed through the school system an educational opportunity for children in our community right around the Dunbar house. And I would have to say the times that she's invited me over to come to some of their sessions, she gives them a topic and they are like second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade maybe. She gives them a topic and they compose, they write. She may give them a subject, say like pain, and they express their many different feelings. Then she compiles the various topics that they have written, and she actually creates a book. She has it published. So we have in the school where she is, we have young people who are going to the third grade, bragging on their book that they participated in and reading everything they can because they have found the joy of books.
Amen.
Ms. Ski,
Yeah.
have they ever closed off the street in front of the Dunbar house?
Oh yes, many times.
Have you ever had anything in the street in front of the Dunbar house?
Yes, that for any major festival, the whole block is closed off because so many people come. And yes, we've put stages on the lawn. You do know that lawn was purchased by Paul because his mother wanted a lawn. That was one of her dreams. She wanted a house with a lawn. So that lawn actually would have been another parcel of land to buy, and a house would have been there. But
I'm just trying to visualize the street, and it's not coming to me. But what I'm thinking is it possible to put a tent in the street with chairs in the street?
Yes.
And have people on a stage telling in the street with the streets cut off so that the traffic. I'm just thinking of a community kind of event that highlights the home and be able to tell from his porch or tell from a tent. You can have a couple of food vendors there, as long as they got some sausage and some crab cakes. People will come out. I think it'd just be interesting. Not something I could put together, but there's enough people on the hook here in Dayton that might be able to push it through.
Yes, in fact, anytime we have some kind of festival similar to that, and I'm retired now, but when I was there, we would close the street, the police department would close the street on both ends and have an entrance and an exit for the area. And yes, we did have large festivals sometimes. And yes, it is possible to put up a microphone on a stage on the lawn and seat the chairs on the street. Yes.
Because I'm hearing a lot about the community involvement, and it'd be nice to have something formal and something for the community where there's like a contest that culminates with the event. And it could be like a children's thing on a Saturday morning and an adult thing in the evening. And I don't know if we're gonna have to have extra security because I don't know about dating.
Well, that's an excellent idea, and I'll make sure I write that down. And yes, it would be nice for everybody in the neighborhood to know where the Dunbar house is.
Yeah.
One of the things that got me for all the years that I worked at the Dunbar house, I could step outside sometime because the lawn was so beautiful. I'd sit on the veranda and just watch the cars go by and the people walk by. And finally, somebody would stop and say, "Now, which house is the Dunbar house?"
Oh, God.
And I would say, "Are you from Dayton?" I was born in Dayton. And I said, "Have you where do you live? I live right over there. They could point to the house.
Wow.
Our people can't lose communication simply because they need to embrace the, we don't get a lot of local visitors. And comparatively, I would have to say for the population of African Americans in Dayton, I asked people, prominent people, people who are the big people in our community, if they would donate chairs to or something, make a donation to the Dunbar House. And they said, the state takes care of that. They don't know that the budget comes for 69 parks from the state in one lump. And they send it to the Ohio Historical Society. Then the Ohio Historical Society sends us what they think we can get by with. And then they take care of the sites that are flourishing. With the German heritage is one case. So there were times when I did turn to the community and the community would say, oh, I don't want to be bothered with that old fashioned place. I don't even like to look at the furniture in there. So we have a lot of growing to do. We have a lot to do.
When I first started coming to the Dunbar House, even before you were there, Mrs. Ski, I recall I was brought in actually to be a judge because they had a competition in the schools with all the kids memorizing Dunbar's work. Yes. And they had the winners presenting on that porch right behind you. Yes. That was the stage. They were standing on the porch and they had chairs out on the lawn and we were looking back towards them. And I just did my heart so good to hear those kids get up and say, you know, my name is Hakeem Dada, I'm gonna do In the Morning, bam, and he'd kill it. And then another little girl would get up and say, I'm gonna do this, and she would kill it. And it was just, and I recall vividly, and I probably told you this story, that I leaned over to somebody and I said, I know Dunbar is smiling right now. And I looked up at that window where his loafing hope was, and that curtain opened, and God is my witness. I saw him standing there smiling. That window right there. That window right
there.
Yeah.
Rich, I think this must have been an evening sighting. You must have had
You were smoking that day.
No, that brother, hey. Miss Ski, no, he's in there. His mother's in there too.
Yeah.
His mother's in there too.
It bothers me. It bothers. I could go. When I go to the back of the Dunbar House, sometimes I wanted to always make sure those curtains were drawn. And by the time I'd walk around or I had been there for a few hours and I was in the back again, I'd look up and they had been pulled back just enough to look out.
See, y'all think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I've told you, they in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna make one big confession. I was going up the steps of the Dunbar House and I heard a voice.
Uh-oh.
And I really couldn't handle it. And I turned around and I said, I love you, but wait a minute. And because I was very rejecting, I did go on down. I turned around and went downstairs because I didn't know if that was somebody in there hiding or what. But I heard that voice very, very clearly. And
Jesus.
Well,
Spirits are there. I mean, their spirit is in that house.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, no doubt.
And the Love and Hope curtains do the same thing. I'd be getting ready to leave in the afternoon. And, but I would go to the water closet. Oh, I didn't tell anybody what the water closet was today. It was the bathroom.
Yeah, they had indoor plumbing.
But yeah, after the health department demanded that people could not use outdoor toilets in Dayton anymore, the water closet was installed and it took care of a bedroom in, not the whole area, but it ended up being a 2-bedroom, a 2-bedroom house with a loafing hut for Paul. But it's just been so exciting just to be near people who appreciate Dunbar is it's just joy.
Food for the soul, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
I'd like to share some with the group before I go. I want you to know this is fresh off the press.
Uh-oh.
Lil Paul Laurence, The Boy Genius, is co-authored by myself and Professor Greg Wiggin from University of North Carolina at Charlotte. We got, yeah.
My
go
homeboy.
on Amazon, go on eBay, it's fresh off the press.
Oh, wow.
And it's affordable.
I want a signed copy.
Okay, you can get it.
Okay.
Tell me where to send it, I send it to.
All right.
Go ahead.
235.
235.
Fairway Drive. Fairway.
Oh, Fairway. Fairway.
You got it. Southern Pines.
Southern Pines.
North Carolina.
Okay. Zip.
28387.
You got it.
And you got PayPal?
Yeah, it's PayPal on the site.
Okay.
PayPal or any kind of credit card.
Okay. I'm gonna do that.
All right.
Send you the money.
28387.
28387.
I got one other question for you, Mitch.
Yeah.
That song from the Civil War is called A Shoken Farewell.
Yeah, ASHOKEN.
A-N.
A Shoken Farewell.
Okay. All right. God bless everybody. I'm signing out. I got
to. All right, brother.
Good seeing you again, man.
Good seeing you too, my friend.
Sure. Good seeing
Nice
you.
to meet you, Brother Moon. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Ralph. I tell you.
All the time, because I got married in a church where he's a member.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Who?
Harmon.
That's right.
I see him all the time.
Hey, wait, I'm gonna see you next week when I come down to pick up that bronze. I'll give you a call.
Where you want to meet me?
We'll meet at the fountain.
Go.
All right, I'll see you all. I'm gonna stop the meeting and stop the.
Wait a minute. I just want to tell everybody that you have given me so much joy. And today is my 53rd wedding anniversary.
Oh,
all right.
Congratulations.
Great.
Yeah.
And you made it a memorable one for you.
Very
Amen.
memorable. It's been a gift. It's just a gift, I tell you. But 53 years?
Yeah.
Amen.
Miss Ski. Where's Frank? Put Frank on there. Let me see Frank. Where's Frank? Come here, Frank. Let me talk with you. Come here, Frank. Let me see you.
Name of your book.
Where is he? Where's
Frank?
What you say?
What about your book? I had walked away. I had to go put something. I had to rattle some pots in the kitchen.
All out.
Okay. It's
Oh, nice.
yeah. The boy.
Well, everybody.
And I want you to know everything in here is totally Afrocentric. Period.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll look for my copy as well.
I have to go. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
right.
Yvette. Nice seeing you
signing
again.
off. Well,
Hey,
Yes.
is that a Willie Nash print behind you? Before you leave, who is that?
No, it's an African guy that I knew up in Maryland. His name is Sani.
Okay. Looks like Willie.
And it's
Nash.
not a print. No,
I didn't mean to say print. I'm sorry.
I told him, I said, give me that.
I know that's,
That's
right.
right.
I didn't mean to
That's
say
right,
print.
sister.
I know it's not a
That's
print. Yeah, he looks
right.
like Willie Nash's.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, Andrea,
Thank you,
I'll
Honor
see
Woman.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Hey, Frank. You lucky guy.
Hey,
You.
Frank, what's up, man?
53 years with Mrs. Ski. What a lucky guy you are.
53, yes.
That's right.
Yes. And we're gonna celebrate it again tonight.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Good deal, man. You look good,
My
Frank.
partner just said no, no. What does that mean?
Hey,
It's bitter aspirin time, I guess.
She got her hair done. You ain't messing that hair up. You know how the sisters are. You ain't messing that hair up tonight.
I'll tell you guys, live it up while you're still young because it goes by rapidly.
all
I hope
right.
to see you again, Andrea.
I hope to see you all again. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, Andrea, take care.
Reggie,
Love
good seeing
Thank
you.
you all.
Okay.
Thank you. Happy anniversary. Everybody be safe. Stay
All
woke.
right. Peace.
Take care.
Stay woke. All right.
Okay, Oni. I want to
Hey,
get some of them.
Reginald.
I'm gonna get with you, girl, on some of them books.
Yeah, I'm gonna play my bass with you. I'm practicing. Picked it back up last night.
Look, I'll see you before you know it. Congratulations on the program. Much love.
We're gonna do a Nina Simone tribute, and I had to learn the bass line to 4 women.
Okay.
So we have a big show coming up in front of that sculpture I sent you in Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna play the bass line, and my sisters come up and they take each part of 4 women.
Okay.
If we get a video, I'll send